GrokTALK.
On healthcare, Jean Shaheen didn't tell the truth.
You can keep your insurance if you like it. It will increase choices for families. It will promote competition.
The facts. More than 20,000 New Hampshire patients have had their coverage canceled. And Obamacare offers only one insurer on New Hampshire's individual market. So next November, if you like your senator, you can keep her. If you don't, you know what to do. Ending Spending Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GrokTALK.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com.
GrokTALK.
We have an interesting Whiskey Tango Foxtrot this week. Welcome to GrokTALK, by the way. I'm here with Mike Rogers. Skip has the day off. He's under the weather. All of the weather, actually. And there's a guy, Susan posted this morning, and thank you very much, Susan, because we always wonder what Whiskey Tango Foxtrot we're going to cover, and I can almost always rely on you to send me something. New Hampshire's affirmative consent bill copies California's. New Hampshire Democrat State Rep. Rennie Cushing drafted a bill modeled on California's law and shared it with the Washington Examiner. He noted the main difference between his draft legislation and the California law, which applies to all public and private California colleges. What they're basically going to do with the New Hampshire version of the Yes Means Yes bill, and for those of you who haven't been following the story on GrokTALK or anywhere else in the internet world, what it means is it's the rape culture thing. So you have to have like all kinds of documentation or proof or evidence that everybody said yes, and that at no point during the sexual exchange, whatever it might be, that nobody said no. And so it's basically almost impossible. And really what it does is it sets up people for lawsuits and all kinds of bad things. And in this case, our lovely Democrat state rep has said that what he's going to do is it's going to apply to both public and private colleges and universities, and the incentive that we have here in New Hampshire to deal with the private universities is going to relate to their status as tax-exempt entities, or entities exempt from property taxes. So this is a property tax grab. If the if the universities don't comply with this law and come up with some draconian set of rules for the exchange of affection between two people of any consensual age, they will march in and say, "We're removing your tax-exempt status." Isn't that fabulous? Isn't that just wonderful? Talk about building opportunity in New Hampshire.
Is that the demi tax or the dummy tax?
Yeah, no kidding.
And you know, what's the difference between standing up in court and saying, "I thought she said yes," and them actually going through the motions and they still get to court and they said, "But she said yes," and she said, "But no, I didn't," because there were the only two of them in the room. I don't see that it advances the culture whatsoever unless you get it in writing.
A lot of groups have come out, like the ACLU and groups like that, are questioning the California law because it puts people in a really awkward situation, because normally there's no way to determine. It becomes a he said, she said, just like,
Yeah.
I mean, with the lack of evidence, all you're really doing is inviting people who might feel uncomfortable the next day with something that happened, whether it was consensual or not, and invites them to call a lawyer and say, "I would like to file charges or to call the police against this individual because I'm not sure." And of course, they'll be like, "Okay, let's take them to court."
Yeah.
And the end result's going to be the same, like you just said. If there's no actual evidence and nobody can prove anything, all you're really doing is feeding lawyers and creating this horribly toxic and unpleasant culture in the university system.
And usually it goes against the guys, although, and excuse the stereotype, every so often you'll get the 30-something school mom going after the 15-year-old schoolboys, which is predatory, but usually they think the guys are the predators, and it's the women screaming foul, "Give me a lawyer."
There's actually a lot of that going on, but it doesn't ever get reported.
No, because mostly the boys don't mind.
Hey, we wanted to let you know who our guests are going to be today. Patrick.
And sorry, that was horribly stereotypical as well.
It's not entirely false. Stereotypes exist for a reason in many cases. Some of them are very unfair and unjust, but people's natural sense of prejudice is a defense mechanism for helping them observe and manage the things that they see in the world, not the bad prejudice that you've been trained to believe means people are being mean to some group. That's not what that really means. But anyway, before we wander too far off, Patrick Page, who is from downstairs.
Right. So we're living almost rent-free thanks to CNHT over his head, because Patrick Page, who joins us first at 9:30, is otherwise known as the Flagman, as well as being, so I'm told, an excellent real estate agent, but he owns Flagworks, over which we sit.
Now, he's running for the House, is that right? Or what's he doing? Is he running for anything?
I'm not sure if he's already a rep, but he's very active in conservative politics. He was a delegate at the convention, so he'll have his own view of what went on there, and he seems to be a good conservative.
All right, we'll ask him about it.
And he's got a store full of great flags.
Oh, yeah, anybody with a flag store. Good guy. Okay, Josh Moore, who is running for the New Hampshire House from my town in Merrimack, will be with us after that. And then Eileen Landies, who is running for Senate District 20, which is, I believe, West Manchester and parts of Goffstown, or maybe all of Goffstown. We'll clear that up with her when she comes in.
And we'll find out, is that a conservative-leaning district? West Manchester a little more than Central, maybe?
Well, it's closer to Bedford.
Yeah.
In Goffstown, so maybe there's some hope for that part of town. But I don't know. It's odd, the demographics, the way they work. It could be, the liberal district. Well, that's why gerrymandering works, right? Because it just ends there, and then, it's just sort of. So, yeah, and we have that, and then, of course, we have Rennie, who we just talked about, who's bringing California to New Hampshire, and gosh, we love that. We're so excited. Mm-hmm. Some other cool Democrats who said stupid things recently that made the news this week. Democrat candidate John White, who I believe is also running for the New Hampshire Senate, called our low-income citizens, of whom there really aren't that many, he called them bottom feeders, and engaged in his economic policy solution, which is to raise the minimum wage, which if you go to GrokTALK.com, you'll see how that is a load of crap.
So bottom feeders are a species of ugly fish that scoot along in the mud and the muck at the bottom of the harbor or the river or whatever and get whatever they can.
And suck up the leftovers.
And if you raise the minimum wage, all you've done is raise the bottom, not taken the bottom feeders off of it.
Correct.
If you want to move people up, you give them equal opportunity and a chance to move upwards. And I refer again to Pastor Raphael Cruz, the father of Fearless Ted, who I spoke to on Thursday night. Man, what a passionate guy he is. And he is all about equal opportunity, not equal outcome.
To quote Mr. White, if the Republicans were serious about job creation, they'd get serious about boosting the bottom feeders and stop worrying so much about the boys in the boardrooms. Instead, they eliminated the state's minimum wage, dropping the state wage floor to the federal level. Oh, dear. A level at which no family can survive. Well, let's be honest. At $10.10 an hour, which is the generic target for the minimum wage. In fact, Obama's weekly radio address was about the minimum wage. You can't live on that either, so your argument is crap. But let's talk about your argument. The average minimum wage, the average wage in New Hampshire is $22.62 an hour. If you go to the New Hampshire Department of Employment Safety, they have a lovely chart, which I'm going to post later today, that breaks occupations out. Restaurant, management, office, da-da-da, and it tells you what they earn per hour on average based on all the salary data that they collect. Okay?
Including, of course, for the restaurant workers.
Including restaurant workers, who are
the tips that they get.
The lowest hourly group of occupations. Now, they make $10.78 an hour on average. That's if they're reporting all their tips, which I've worked in restaurants. They don't report all their tips.
Yeah.
They report some of them, but not all of them. And let's be honest, most of those jobs are part-time jobs. They're entry-level jobs. They're jobs that you get when you're going to school just to make a little extra money. They're jobs that you get when you live at home with your parents who work and pay for all your stuff. They're jobs that you get maybe as a second job because you want to save money to buy something you don't have. They're not usually the kinds of jobs that you sustain a family on in the first place. And once you get into one of those jobs, a strange thing happens. If you apply yourself and you do a good job, they give you more money. And then you rise up in the ranks, and then you can take those skills and get a better job. And the market supports that to the degree that even the lowest occupational rate of pay is $10.78 an hour in New Hampshire.
Not 10.10.
Not 10.10. And it's not the federal minimum wage at which Mr. White says no family can survive.
Right, and of course that's only part of it. Even in the lowest of occupations, such as flipping burgers at Mac Burger King or whatever.
McBurger Wendy's.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. The people who apply themselves get invited to get into management. And on the management track at places like McDonald's, you get offered additional education, credits for college, all sorts of things.
I'm a living example of that. I started as a burger flipper at $2.35 an hour in the late 70s. Within a number of years, I was making a manager's salary, getting professional management training at their expense, which I then used many years later to jump into other restaurant jobs that paid more, and later to get out of the industry altogether. I got into high tech.
And that's how it works.
Exactly.
You get experience. Experience is something that you can't buy. Well, you can sort of buy it at college, and that doesn't work out so well. You mostly get the hard way. So you go and work on the cheap for a while. You could be
an art major in college and then go work at McDonald's.
Yeah. You say to somebody in the business, it's like, I'd like to learn to do what you do. I'll work cheap if you'll teach me. Of course, that's the informal way. The formal way is you go into an entry-level job. If the price that they have to pay for that entry-level job is worth more than the experience that you don't have, they aren't going to take you. That's what happens in a formal economy, a formal minimum wage. And the other thing which we don't have here in America, and hopefully will never have, is all sorts of regulations about how and when they can't fire you. You're saying, he's cruel, he's mean, he's a Republican. No, just a minute. In Europe, unemployment is structurally high. It's structurally high because the costs of getting rid of a bad worker are so outrageous in terms of the paperwork, the legal steps, the costs, that people simply are very, very cautious about hiring. So anytime the government, especially the socialists, say they're going to give something to you, they're going to make it easier for you, they're going to raise the floor, what they're really saying is they're chopping the bottom rungs off the ladder, and you're never going to get that first foothold, and you'll be permanently unemployed.
And you create a permanent underclass. People who have to feed off the government, which drives up more costs, which makes it even harder and harder for employers to sustain their businesses.
Right. You have to bring a lot of value to a job for it to be worth their while to employ you. And minimum wage is driving in that direction. You should rejoice in a state where there is no minimum wage, and you should celebrate your opportunity to earn more than it in a hurry.
Do you remember what the federal minimum wage is now? 75 or something like that?
I've lost track. It's one of those things that...
It's around there. I know it's not something you have to worry about because you don't hire minimum wage employees or anything like that, but it is that, and New Hampshire's is $3 or more higher than that on its own based on free market forces. So I think Mr. White and Mr. Obama and the Democrat Party should take their little wage rage shtick and shove it.
Right. I mean, at the kind of skill levels that I deal at, I rarely look for people earning less than $100,000. Yeah, ouch.
Well, I mean, those are the job skills you're talking about.
You're talking about extreme levels of skill and experience that can be thrown into very tricky situations and somehow solve them. And you don't pay lightly for those things. But you never get that experience if you're priced out of the market.
You don't. I learned, on the fly.
Yeah.
I learned QMS. I learned ISO. I wrote an ISO system without any professional training whatsoever, completely certified, passed all the exams, tests, whatever they give you. You're your business, I brought that with me to another company, learned engineering documentation control, drawings and stuff, all kinds of things. Now I'm doing marketing. I'm actually learning marketing. I'm learning Salesforce and Leadformix and all these other things. And I'm learning those things because I learned all that other stuff all the way back to my $2.35 an hour job. No college degree. Ladies and gentlemen, It can be done. You just have to want to do it.
And by the way, I don't have a formal college degree either. I have something awfully close to it, which is basically a series of British technical qualifications that are close to a master's in in communications.
And you started in the military, right? You
I
learned
did.
a lot about what you know, or expanded that knowledge. Because
I did. I learned it out of high school as a trade. I actually got out of high school at 16. Shock horror. But, not to stop being educated, but to continue my education in the military.